Oh, that is like it, right? So I'll go home now. Um, you know, it's a crazy world right now. Um, and it's as challenging as it all is right now. I forget, but I deeply know, right? To everyone with me on that, like I forget, but I deeply know that it is calling all of us to something more, something that we can't even, it's a God idea trying to express. It's a God idea of love. It's a God idea of equality. It's a God idea of inclusion. It's not our human understanding of it. And anytime we're talking about God ideas, anybody in here know this from their own life? And you get this idea that's bigger than who you understand yourself to be, and it feels too big, it feels too much. I don't know how to do this. That is a God idea. And in the midst of those kinds of ideas, there is so many contractions and expansions and contractions and expansions, because our humanness is really trying to resist, because it's leading us into new territory. And so this book, I've pared it down to 7 ideas. Right? I went through and I looked at everything from the last 6 weeks, and I was like, you know what, can we just try to distill this down? Because how do we actually stay on this journey? Because I don't think that, I know I can't, let me speak for myself right now, I can't show up in whatever this new consciousness is unless I bring all of my most authentic self. Not part of my authentic self, but all of my authentic self. And that's what she's truly inviting us into when she says, can you learn to trust yourself? Can you learn to trust yourself? And she's not talking about your personality, egoic self. We are being invited to trust the divinity that we are. We're being invited to trust that larger understanding of not only who we are, but of who everyone is. And in a world that is so polarized, it can be very challenging, right? It can be challenging. And so our work is to keep doing the work. Not to stop doing the work, not to think we're done, not to think we figured it out, not to think anything except what more am I being invited to become right now? Because the love that we are is infinite in its potential. So listen to your intuition over your inner critic. Whew. Could we just walk around doing that? What would that be like if we actually didn't cave into that inner critic, which is always whispering, oh, nobody's gonna like you. Oh, they're gonna think you're weird. Oh, people aren't gonna enjoy that. You're gonna get all kinds of resistance right? All the stories that we tell ourselves. So one of the things she really stresses, and I'm starting at the beginning of the book and just sort of moving forward, is that this is really about freedom, right? It's about freedom to be our most authentic self. It's to not feel constrained. And I pulled my favorite quotes, right? I love this. This is not a trip for tourists. This is a trip for travelers. Are we travelers in here? Right? We are travelers in here. We are not just staying right where we are, looking around and going, oh, isn't that interesting? We are in it as travelers. And so the invitation is we have to follow that intuition. Because the intuition will answer questions while the thoughts, all that critic, ever notice how all it does is churn out more questions? That's all it ever does. When we're following in our intuition, that means that we're landing in that place of certainty. We're landing in that place of faith. She says this, I had always thought that the driven, critical voice within me would help me shape up and get ahead. How many people in here have bought into that narrative? I had no idea that voice was denying me access to my true power. I didn't know I had true power. Your most authentic self, your true self, is powerful beyond imagining. I just want you to take that in for a second. Because in this world, sometimes we feel powerless, yes? But we are actually powerful beyond imagining. So part of what we're being invited into is to move past that critical voice. It's never going to go away. Everyone take a breath. It's never going to go away. But is it the voice that's driving us, that's making our decisions? We want to embrace this idea that we make mistakes, because we can't grow if we're not making mistakes. And we have to meet ourselves and each other with compassion. And the big one is forgiveness. We are never, as a country, going to move past this polarization unless we can activate forgiveness. I mean that. And when you look at what South Africa was able to do, Nelson, that was all about forgiveness. You want to talk about extreme polarization? Forgiveness is something that we are all being invited into. And we get angry. Chris and I were watching a movie yesterday. It's an old movie with Nicole Kidman, and she plays a character who was born in Africa. And one of the traditions they have is that if somebody murders someone in your family, the tribe would go down to the river, they would tie the person who did the crime up and throw them in the river. And the family gets to decide, am I going to save that person or am I going to let them die? And the belief in the culture is that if you let them die, your vengeance is assuaged, but you will carry the grief with you for the rest of your life. But if you save that person, that you are engaging in an act of healing, not only for yourself, but for everyone in the community. I feel like we're in that place. And we have to do the work where we honestly and authentically, and there's the rub, right, would actually dive in and save the person who we feel is doing us the most harm. What if mistakes mark where you haven't hit your highest, not because of the mistake, but because you haven't been loving towards yourself? And I love this. We blame the mistake. Oh, I did that mistake. I wasn't my best. I wasn't my greatest. I wasn't showing up who I wanted to be. What if that's actually because you're beating yourself up? You're not showing up as who you wanted to be because you're beating yourself up because you're on a path of growth and expansion. You get in your own way when you perceive your life as full of mistakes. You discover your own way when you forgive yourself and others. So this practice of forgiveness right now is just very alive for me, right? Very alive for me. And I want to invite you into that practice because it is that stark. They drown or you pull them out of the river. That's when we're not engaged in forgiveness, that's what we're doing. And you carry that with you. We're the ones who are carrying that with us, right? Nurture yourself and practice self-care diligently. Whew. I've been stepping into this week, like hardcore. Been like, nope, not doing that because I need to just lie on the sofa and be a vegetable. Because sometimes that's what we have to do, right? Because the way you see and treat yourself within your life, that is your life. So when you're being harsh to yourself, when you're being mean to yourself, let's be honest, how many people in here are mean? How many people in here say things like, oh my God, I was so stupid. I can't believe I did that. What is wrong with me? What's the narratives that we run through? Think about saying that to like a 5-year-old. It would be horrible. It We would never talk that way to somebody else. We talk that way to ourselves all the time. So this idea of an exceptional life, which is what we're all being invited into, not a mediocre life, an exceptional life, it requires more and yet less. Less of that critical voice, less of that fear and anxiety and worry. She says high alert is one frequency, deep alert is another. We're being invited into that deeper sense of who we are and how we are called to show up to be in the world. And how you treat yourself is a prayer to yourself, capital S. Do you honor your divine nature? We are divinely human. Do we forget that all the time? We have to hold that. Right? We have to hold that. So most often what we do is we elevate our divinity. Woohoo, my divine self is so amazing. And my human self is just kind of a mess. I'm inviting us into a place of integration, our divine humanness. Can we hold our divinity? Can we hold our humanity? And can we integrate that so that we can be compassionate in time and in space, but anchored in the truth of who we actually are? Because when we're actually devoted to ourself, we are devoted to the divine. Being devoted to yourself is being devoted to love. Being devoted to yourself is being devoted to connection. If we can't give it to ourselves, guess what? We can't give it to anybody else. Stand in your power, right? Stand in your power. And we have fabulous tools to do that. We have affirmations, we have negations, we have affirmative prayer. We have tools that are so, the technology that we have, and it is technology. The technology that Unity has to transform our consciousness is more powerful than an Excel spreadsheet. We need to activate that within ourselves. We need to, the way you would try to master a new program on your computer, we need to master the skills that we have. How many people in here have a critical voice that just comes up, right? Oh, everybody's hand should come up, folks, right? I mean, no denial here, okay? So affirmations and negations are like the baseline, like the foundation. We say, oh, I'm really scared right now. And then we say, but that fear is not going to have any power over me because I am a divine human and I am powerful beyond imagining. Do you see how I used a negation? I'm not negating my fear. Let me be very clear. We do not negate our emotions. We do not dismiss our emotions. We get to feel our emotions, but we do not let them have control and power over us. Instead, we acknowledge the truth of who we are. And so the affirmative prayer process, part of what that does is it's about when we are willing to stand in our divine spiritual authority, in our Christ nature, take up your bed and walk. There's not a whole lot of in there, right? It's pretty clear. Do it. Be it. So any challenge that you're facing, right? It's not about how it's holding you back. It's about how you can step into a greater understanding of who you actually are. And I love how she described this as helplessness is an electric fence around me. But it turns out that I can turn off the current at any time. And that's what our spiritual tools, our spiritual technology gives us the power to do, to turn off that current. You may lack confidence, but you never lack power. And that is something we have to completely remind ourselves of. So how do we remind ourselves? Our affirmative prayer practice, this is just the heart of it, right? So if I'm in fear about the shutdown and how it's impacting my world right now, right? I remind myself, God is infinite possibility. Therefore, I am infinite possibility. And therefore, I can breathe into whatever this experience is because I know that I have the capacity to navigate it all. I can navigate all of it from a place of strength, from a place of expansion, not contraction. Right? We remind ourselves, God is, I am, therefore I can. Everybody say it. God is, I am, therefore I can. Right? Because it's the I can part that really matters. It's the I can part that actually changes how we show up in the world, in time and in space. So it doesn't just stay in idea land. It actually manifests in some powerful way, like it did yesterday. That was a God is, I am, therefore we can. Right? Be daring and stretch past your current limitations. I get it. Like, for some of us, it's like, oh, this is the way it is. All of us have some area in our life where we think, this is just the way it is. What if that's not true? Just the question, what if that's not true? What if it's the way it is because you have that electric fence all charged up around you and you're not moving into the full potential of who you truly are? So we have to be daring. We have to be willing to not dim our light. Put yourselves out there and shine generously, brightly, and bravely. That is what we are all called to do and to be. Can we say this affirmation together? I will not dim my light. I dare to shine generously, brightly, and bravely. And yesterday I was looking on Threads and Blue Sky, and there was small towns in red states where, it's one thing to show up in Novato, right? Everybody breathe into that with me, right? And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that freedom, right? For that sense of safety. But there were people in red states showing up, right? Right? Standing in their courage. There was one town in Tennessee, this tiny little town, and they had a picture that showed the last No Kings rally, 11 of them showed up. And then they showed the next one, and there was over 700 people. Because those 11 were willing to shine their light. Because they were courageous. So the practice of an inspired life is about transcending limitations. Everyone really think about what that means for yourself. Every limitation you've placed on yourself. We are being invited to live into an inspired life, that moving from our intuition, from our deepest wisdom, not from what our mind tells us is the way that things have to be. And the way we do that is by showing up and by daring to do things that make us doubt ourselves. That thing that you're like, oh, I don't know. That's the thing you need to dare yourself to do. And it doesn't matter whether it works out or shows up or does what you want it to do. That's not the point. The point is that you're exercising your muscle to trust yourself, to step out, to be courageous, to shine brightly. It's about being that, not about the stuff you get from it. It's about the beingness. That's what we're focused on. Be grateful for the abundance that you do have. That red state, blue state, we live in an abundant world. We are blessed. Do you really sit with your blessings? Or are you constantly focused on what you don't have? What don't I have? What we want to focus on is this idea that this is an abundant world. She says, by offering thanks, I'd be loving my life instead of making mental lists of where it might improve. And this is the difference between operating from our mind and operating from our intuition, right? I love this Joe Dispenza, and I know for some people he's challenging, but I love his work. And if you have not sat and gone on YouTube and done any of his meditations, I invite you to explore it. But the quantum field responds not to what we want. Whew. Okay, just that is like the biggest misunderstanding of unity teachings. It's not like, oh, I want a Maserati, and then I get a Maserati. The quantum field responds to who we are being. That's what the response is. So whatever it is that you want more of from that deep understanding, you want more love, you want more connection, you want more clarity around what is yours to do, you need to be that first. You have to be it first and foremost. You need to live in that energy field. And sometimes that means playing what if. What if, just to get it in your embodied being. Like, what would it be like if you didn't have to worry about paying your rent each month? What would that feel like in your body? And can you live in that beingness? That's becoming a place for abundance. And then be a stand for kindness and in service to the world. This is ultimately where the whole point of you learning to trust yourself is so that you can be a stand for kindness and be in service to the world. That's what we're here for. And it can be hard to anchor kindness in a world that doesn't seem to be very kind right now. Make empathy great again. But that's ours to do. That's ours to do. Can you feel the truth of that? If we want more empathy, guess what? We have to be more empathy. If we want more equality, guess what? We have to be that. She says, be a stand for kindness or a tuning fork that allows others to remember what is right in themselves and in this life. This is the whole point of affirmative prayer. The whole point of affirmative prayer is to align ourselves with the truth of our divine humanity and then see it and reflect it back at everybody else. The prayer chaplains are going to be doing a special service on November 9th. You're not going to want to miss it because our affirmative prayer process is so powerful. Because if you're like, well, how do I be a light in the world? You need to start the affirmative prayer practice. I cannot tell you how transformative it is. You know, there's a part of Tama's sort of perspective, right, that has a cynical sort of like thread that kind of runs through it, which you can either relate to or not, right? I can relate to it because I used to be that. Really used to be that. And some of that is it's kind of like a New Yorker, sophisticated, like intellectual, everything is cynic. You're a cynic about everything. You're raised to be a cynic about everything. That's being smart, right? That's taking care of yourself. That's being realistic. Anybody in here can relate to this? It's not just New Yorkers, right? It's everywhere. When we step into the affirmative prayer process, we're stepping into a place of deep and powerful transformation. So that when I look at people, what I'm able to see now is not how I need to protect myself. It drives my wife nuts, right? Drives her nuts sometimes. She's like, you're so trusting. I'm like, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Because that's what this process enables me to become. Because it constantly reminds me of the divinity of who we all are. Michael Beckwith used to share this story of she was someone who went to Agape, and she gave him permission to share the story, where she was somewhere traveling and she got kidnapped. And she's in this car driving with this person who is threatening all kinds of things. And she said that like this stillness came over her, and she just saw him as the Christ light that he actually was. And they ended up having this intense conversation, and he drove her back to her hotel and dropped her off. Right? Infinite potential, the infinite field of potential. That's what we are constantly inviting ourselves into. So you get in your own way when you take actions from your smaller self, and you discover your own way when you act from selfless love. She said all she saw was how much pain this person was in. That's what she saw. All right, so here's the 7. Listen to your intuition over your inner critic. Embrace your mistakes and meet yourself and others with compassion and forgiveness. Nurture yourself and practice self-care diligently. Stand in your power. Build a practice of affirmations, negations, and affirmative prayer. Be daring and stretch past your current limitations. Be grateful for the abundance that you do have, and be a stand for kindness and in service to the world. This is the ongoing journey. This is what we're all being invited into. And on the other side of this journey for us, because this is an infinite journey, this is going to continue long past when we have left this planet in this particular shape and form that we're in. But we want to leave the world better than we found it. That's right, better than we found it. More love, more compassion, more forgiveness. So let's take this into our time of meditation. Because that's a lot, yes? But I got 7, right? That kind of covers what she covers in the book, right? Let's just breathe into whatever got, stirred, because the stirring is good. The stirring may be uncomfortable, but the stirring is good. So just quieting that mind, however active it may have been or become, and just really, if you want to place your hands on your heart for a moment, just be present here in this beautiful heart space that is love, that is limitless potential. Just the invitation is to touch that, or let it envelop you, or sink into it, or whatever image works for you, but to allow your humanness to lay its burdens down. There is that which you are, which is powerful beyond imagining, that has wisdom, inspiration, that is seeking a way for this world to align with the highest vibration of truth. As each of our lives, as this community, as this world. And as we touch that place, that awareness and consciousness of who and what and whose we truly are, I invite you to just allow whatever feels outside of it, whatever feels separate from it, to just bring that into, just welcome it in. What seems intractable? What limitations have you put on yourself, on the world, on your community? And let's just rest for a few minutes in the silence as we just allow the wholeness that we are, the wisdom that we are, to be present with whatever is active in our humanness, welcoming the God idea. How good it is to take this moment to allow whatever it is that we see as our ceiling. And I'm just going to invite you right now to take that ceiling and make it your floor. Take whatever you think is stopping, blocking, limiting, and you're standing upon it, open to limitless potential. This is what I invite you to bring into this coming week on this ongoing journey of truly learning to trust yourself. And so it is. Amen.